With the release of Kraven the Hunter, there are now 5 films within J C Chandor's filmography, so it's time to rank them all from the absolute worst to a lot of good. Welcome to Cinema, where we focus on a film. I'm Josh, this is Simply Cinema. Let me know down in the comments below. Have you watched J C Chandor's films? Do you like them? Do you not like them? Are you somewhere right in the middle? Let me know all your thoughts, how you would rank them as a whole. Make sure to like this video if you enjoy it. Subscribe if you haven't already to join in the film culture community where we talk about the love of cinema as a whole. And getting in last place, we have Kraven the Hunter. Like I mentioned, this is just not so good for the nature of what is all building up, especially coming from J C Chandor, to which there's so many different contrivances, different things that flow about along the way, that it becomes an absolute comedy for all of the wrong reasons, going about ridiculous natures that just doesn't feel fitting for the drama that it's trying to build itself up to be. It's the first from Sony's Spider-Man universe that finally manages to get an R rating, and it fully misuses it for the nature of what it's utilizing with what all goes up with its blood effects, certain things that just doesn't work as effectively for an R-rated film. And the CGI is just some of the worst I've seen of Marvel films or superhero films as of late. So just how that all comes about just gives a bad taste to the wrap of what is all going on with this filmography and just this film as a whole. We have a great cast: Adrian DeBose, Aaron Taylor Johnson, other ones that come about, get mentioned here and there, just doing a great job with their performances, but the story is not particularly intriguing by the way it flows about, and it even starts off with something where you get a prologue and a backstory of Kraven the Hunter, and once he gets his powers, 18 years before the story has started, it jumps straight back into the story without any progression or journey that we get to know Kraven the Hunter, knowing his motivations, everything that has come about, different things he has faced, has overcome, has learned to grow within his powers, that ultimately leads this to be something that's very misfitting and something that's funny for the nature of being so bad that it's not good, but it's still funny. And so that leads into number 4. We have Triple Frontier. Now this is a rather good one, leading up especially from Kraven the Hunter, one of his past Netflix films that delivers on a great cast. We get Ben Affleck, Oscar Isaac, others that are notable to name. The build up to this story, it delivers on tension here and there. There's a tad bit too much exposition, and the part from leading from the first act of this film, the main heist of the story, where they have to invade this house for millions and millions of dollars, leading to the part where they sort of get stranded, goes on a little bit of a jarring tonal shift and a dialogue shift that goes about a different sort of feel to the film. That's sort of a little bit too much for what the shift is like, and so that goes about in a way that isn't always fashionable to what you expect out of the story, whether it's watching it for the first time or having rewatched it just recently again. It just doesn't work quite as effectively for the nature of what that builds up to be. There's still many good moments, and the shift ultimately makes sense to create a problematic stance for what's all going on with these guys. Something that's super frustrating for stealing all these millions of dollars and then ultimately coming across problem after problem after problem that makes them lose more and more money along the way. That goes about this way, that has a little bit of a heartfelt drama piece here and there, has the right emotion, delivers on all the right character build-up moments that make sense for the nature of the story, and ultimately there's certain things that have some great action pieces, some great cinematography that J C Chandor is sort of underrated for and overlooked as a director as a whole, but ultimately this one has its few misses along the way. Which leads me into number 3 of Most Violent Year, an A24 film where I'm not necessarily totally into business side of things, aware of how all these things work out. We get great performances, Oscar Isaac and under the film, his character is married to Jessica Chastain. How that plays about is great with how you get all these different performances. Certain things where they're sort of trying to figure out what is all going on because people keep robbing from his business, robbing from the truck drivers that are driving for him, and that creates different problems here and there that ultimately captivate my attention in a different way that I didn't expect this story to go, going about different caveats of the story. It's not always fully captivating. Like I said, I'm not familiar with the business world of this, but it still has a surprising element that manages to capture my attention because of the action scenes, and particularly with some of the chase scenes, the running scenes, that tracks the people really well and manages to make it seem very seamless to the editing, other things that are coming about along the way, other characters that are building up, and the police crime that's going on, the detective work, and ultimately following the main boss of the business with stakes to be held at hand that could cost his company millions of dollars. And so how that comes about along the way, different side characters that become main characters just by surfacing up, taking a wrong decision by making a different move within his business as a whole, just creates this different sort of atmosphere that really makes this a darker sort of film. In one retrospect, goes about this sharp turn at the very end that works effectively for the mood of what is all building up with the story. It's not necessarily light-handed, but it's not too heavy-ended either. It doesn't follow too many complex dialogue to where you can't really understand everything that's going on. The emotions of what's all going on with the script, the emotional character strides that they're building up when establishing Oscar Isaac, this character as this overworking dad, how that all flows about along the way, just still captivates my attention, even if I don't always understand all of the business side of things after all. Which takes me into number 2, we have All Is Lost. Now this is exactly what I expected while being not very much what I expected. And it's in a very complicated mode. This directorial sophomore debut for his filmography just goes about Robert Redford that's we see is automatically stranded on this boat where he crashes into this one place when he's asleep, and he's locked up in the middle of the ocean for the whole entire movie, going about different ways. There's different things where there's chances of rescue. It doesn't always work out. How that flows about along the way creates elements of desperation, but also connection to this character with the most minimal dialogue you can have. I almost feel like it could have aided more if it didn't have any dialogue at all, but still, there was essential dialogue that worked effectively for the story, if you really call it that. It's in one sense a very random sequence of a flow of events, but it still builds upon the dialogue that works effectively for the silence, everything that's going about. He's not just talking to himself, but Robert Redford still gives a great performance with the way he builds upon the nature of the story. And even though I'm not familiar with boating, how that all works, the different mechanics of how to run it, it still simplifies it to the nature of being a survival film that connects you to the element of danger, creating this situation that builds upon its tension. It doesn't necessarily feel like you're totally immersed, that you're the camera viewing as a person on the boat with him, but you're connecting to the element where the emotions of Robert Redford as this character is the one single character, the one single person that's technically within this film, outside of the boats that you know people are on, but don't see any people. This is where the cast rarely works effectively for building upon the loneliness and the isolation of this one survival film that gets you locked in on this boat throughout the whole ride, not knowing the elements that will come about here and there. It goes about different things that you may expect to happen within this film to build upon attention, but you're not necessarily suspecting when they'll happen, how they'll happen, to what extreme, to what what degrading moment that puts Robert Redford in this element of survival that gets him, showing him as a familiar character that builds upon his own survival skills, knows how to run a boat. So it's not like you're in a total helpless position when going about following this character, but at the same time, the elements of nature are all against him, and so that's where it still puts him at this helpless situation that goes about here and there, builds about some frustrating moments, but nothing that really degrades the character, builds upon something that makes you hate him or puts you into an element where you can't empathize with his situation. So that's where this effectively, while there's still some shaky camera work here and there, it feels all deserving in the nature of how you couldn't really pull this off on any other way outside of different drones or something that may not put you in as close encounter as this film does with connecting with this character. Which takes me into number 1, his directorial debut, Margin Call. Now this is a major surprise. Again, I'm not familiar with the financial world, the business side of things, how that goes about in depth with this company. It reminds me a bit of Glengarry Glen Ross, which is another film that happens to go about a similar following with this story narrative and also has Ken Spacey. But we have a great cast, especially Kevin Spacey. We get Jeremy Irons, especially even as a villain type of role. Stanley Tucci, and other things that go about the way. Where Stanley Tucci is a character that finds out there's a corrupt part of what's all going on with the business. The numbers are going down. There's not too much complicated dialogue, but it doesn't also feel like it's dumbing it down so far that you have to be just brainless to understand anything that's going about. It still feels intelligent with what it's doing with its script. The dialogue, everything feels effective and intriguing by the pacing, the tension, the music, everything that's building about along the story. The quiet means so much, the sound means so much, and so how that concretes and builds upon the characters, different things, the unexpected characters that mean more to the story that you don't expect, other thing that goes and shifts in different directions along the way, characters you don't know if they'll come back, particularly with Stanley Tucci, how that flows about, different payoff cutoffs for what's going on with the business, everything that's going on because the numbers are declining, because other things are degrading, and having to make these harsh business decisions that could be really devastating to the business, and ultimately having Jeremy Irons be a villain of sorts because of his decisions, other things that come about the way that doesn't necessarily make a devastating loss for the business as a whole, but ultimately still catches and manipulates some of the main characters we're cheering for that are making and having some of the right decisions or the lack of decisions at all, and putting them in the right position. That shows there's wavering moments here and there that goes about different wavelengths of attention, but you're captivated quite all the way through. The business ideals and the language, the ideology is familiar by the way it introduces us to it, and creates these concrete characters that are intriguing by the nature of what that works in with the dialogue. It's a dialogue heavy film, but that doesn't take away from the tension that delivers because of their great performances and effectively working as a sort of one set location to some respect. There's different locations that it takes you to here and there, but ultimately most scenes take place within the office building that you find out different things, uncover different things. It could be one of the most bland settings you technically put it in, but it still works effectively because of all the surrounding dialogue, the cast, everything that works along with the compounding narrative that ultimately builds upon attention here and there. And so that's just my ranking of all 5 J C Chandor's films from the absolute worst film to a lot of the good. Let me know down in the comments below what you think of J C Chandor as a director. Were you familiar with him before this ranking? Do you like him? And how would you rank his films as a whole? Make sure to like this video if you enjoy it. Subscribe if you haven't already to join in the film culture community where we talk about the love of cinema as a whole. So that's just all, and make sure to do yourself a favor and go watch a movie.